My fiancée of 4 years swore she could never love anyone but my trusted business partner, claiming our relationship was built on nothing but cold business transactions. At our engagement celebration in front of Manhattan's most powerful investors, Genevieve Sterling made a scene, tearfully announcing she was leaving me for Enrique Myers, declaring that true passion was worth more than any fortune. I granted her wish, signed the partnership dissolution papers, and chose to relocate to oversee our international operations. What she didn't know was that I, Percival Thorne, secretly owned 90% of our billion-dollar empire, while Enrique held only a 10% stake that was worthless without my approval. Without me, their grand plans would crumble to dust. 2 years later, when I returned to expand into new markets, she burst into my penthouse office, desperate and broken, begging me to take her back after losing everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from and if this story touches you. Make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I can still remember the first time I laid eyes on Genevieve Sterling at the Quantum Financial Summit in London 3 years ago. She wasn't just another socialite at the networking event. She was commanding attention in a room full of billionaires, venture capitalists, and tech moguls with her sharp insights about emerging market trends. Her auburn hair caught the light as she gestured passionately while explaining blockchain applications to a circle of fascinated investors, and I found myself completely captivated. That's Genevieve Sterling, my business partner Enrique Myers had whispered to me that night. Following my gaze across the opulent ballroom of the Savoy Hotel, graduated top of her class from Oxford, built her own consulting firm by word is, she's worth about $50 million herself. Enrique and I had built Thorne Myers Industries from the ground up over the past 8 years. What started as a small tech startup in my garage had evolved into a global empire spanning artificial intelligence, renewable energy, and real estate development. Our company was now valued at over $2 billion, with operations in 37 countries. To the outside world, we appeared to be equal partners. Our names were on the letterhead together. We shared a luxurious corner office in our Manhattan headquarters, and we made all major decisions as a team. At least that's what everyone believed. The truth was far more complex. While Enrique held the title of co-CEO and certainly contributed to our success, the actual ownership structure of our company was something I'd kept carefully hidden. Through a labyrinth of holding companies, shell corporations, and legal trusts that my attorney Wilfred Stone had masterfully constructed, I privately owned 90% of Thorne Myers Industries. Enrique's 10% stake, while valuable on paper, is essentially worthless without my controlling interest and approval. This wasn't born from distrust. Enrique had been my roommate at MIT, and we'd genuinely built something incredible together. But my father, Rupert Kendall Thorne, who'd lost his own family fortune to a dishonest business partner decades earlier, had insisted on this structure when he provided our initial funding. Never give away real control, son. He'd warned me countless times. Friendship is beautiful, but business is business. Enrique had never questioned the arrangement. He enjoyed the prestige, the lifestyle, and his substantial salary and bonuses. His 10% still made him incredibly wealthy, and he seemed content with our partnership dynamic. We complemented each other perfectly. I handled the strategic vision and major negotiations, while he excelled at operations and public relations. That night in London, I'd approached Genevieve with a confidence born from years of closing multi-million-dollar deals. But she challenged me in ways no one ever had before. When I mentioned our company's latest AI breakthrough, she immediately asked probing questions about data privacy implications that forced me to think deeper about our approach. When I suggested dinner at an exclusive restaurant, she countered with a proposal to visit a tech incubator in East London instead. I prefer to see how people think when they're building something new, she'd said with a smile that could light up the entire city. Fancy restaurants? Tell me about your wallet. Incubators? Tell me about your mind. Our courtship was unlike anything I'd experienced. Genevieve wasn't impressed by expensive gifts or exclusive events. She wanted intellectual challenges, meaningful conversations about changing the world, and adventures that pushed both of us outside our comfort zones. When I flew her to our renewable energy facility in Dubai, she spent hours discussing sustainability metrics with our engineers rather than shopping at luxury boutiques. When I surprised her with a weekend at our private estate in the Swiss Alps, she organized a strategy session with local environmental groups instead of relaxing at the spa. 3 months after we met, I knew she was the woman I wanted to marry. Proposal came during a business trip to our Tokyo offices. I'd arranged what I thought was a simple dinner meeting, but I'd secretly coordinated with our team to transform the top-floor conference room into an intimate space overlooking the city skyline. As the sun set over Tokyo Bay, I dropped to one knee and presented her with a custom-designed ring featuring a rare blue diamond I'd acquired at auction. "Genevieve Sterling," I'd said, my voice steady, despite my racing heart, "you've challenged me to become a better person and a better leader. Will you build the future with me as my wife?" Her tears of joy and enthusiastic yes made that moment the happiest of my life. Our engagement was announced in the Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, and Forbes simultaneously. The business world was fascinated by the union of two successful entrepreneurs, and we quickly became the subject of countless society page features and interviews. Genevieve moved into my penthouse apartment in the Platinum Tower, and she began taking a more active role in some of our company's initiatives, particularly our environmental sustainability programs. Enrique seemed genuinely happy for both of us. He'd often joke that he was gaining a sister-in-law who was probably smarter than both of us combined, and he frequently praised Genevieve's insights during our strategy meetings. The three of us would often work late into the evening, ordering takeout and brainstorming about expanding into new markets or developing innovative products. During those months, our company reached new heights. We acquired 3 startups, launched our groundbreaking solar panel technology, and announced plans for a revolutionary smart city project in Singapore. The financial press called us the unstoppable trio, and industry analysts predicted we'd be worth $5 billion within 2 years. Genevieve and I began planning an engagement party that would bring together the most influential people in global business and technology. We reserved the grand ballroom at the Plaza Hotel, hired world-renowned caterers, and sent invitations to over 300 guests, including tech CEOs, government officials, and international investors. "This will be the social event of the year," Genevieve had said excitedly as we reviewed the final arrangements. "I want everyone to see that our partnership isn't just romantic, it's going to change entire industries." I remember looking at her as she spoke, thinking about how perfectly our lives had aligned. She brought passion and purpose to everything we did, while I provided the resources and strategic thinking to make her visions reality. With Enrique handling operations and Genevieve inspiring innovation, I believed we were building something unprecedented. What I didn't realize was that the woman I loved was about to destroy everything we'd built together. She had no idea she was about to destroy herself in the process. The grand ballroom at the Plaza Hotel had never looked more magnificent. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across marble floors, while floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of Central Park. 300 of the world's most influential people mingled beneath gilded ceilings, their conversations creating a sophisticated symphony of deal-making and networking. Tech CEOs, government officials, foreign ambassadors, and media moguls had all gathered to celebrate what the business press had dubbed the merger of the century, not a corporate acquisition, but the union of Percival Thorne and Genevieve Sterling. I stood near the champagne fountain, adjusting my custom Armani tuxedo as I surveyed the impressive gathering. Jeffrey Bezos was deep in conversation with the Japanese Minister of Technology about our upcoming smart city project. Elon Musk had cornered our head of renewable energy, interrogating him about our revolutionary solar panel efficiency ratings. The French ambassador was praising our environmental initiatives to a group of European investors who were eager to bring our technology to their countries. "Quite a turnout," Enrique said, appearing at my side with 2 glasses of Dom Perignon. His black tuxedo was impeccable, and his usual confident smile was broader than I'd ever seen it. "I think half the Forbes billionaire list is here tonight." "Genevieve insisted on making this memorable," I replied, accepting the champagne. She said, "If we're going to announce our future together, we should do it in front of the people who'll help us change the world." change the world. Enrique raised his glass. Two partnerships that transform industries, he said, and we clinked glasses. Looking back, I should have paid more attention to the strange intensity in his eyes. But I was too focused on scanning the crowd for my fiancée, Genevieve. Emerged from a cluster of admiring venture capitalists, and my breath caught, as it always did when I saw her. Her emerald green Valentino gown hugged her figure perfectly, and the diamond necklace I'd given her for her birthday sparkled against her porcelain skin. Oh, but something seemed different about her tonight. Her smile appeared forced, and she kept glancing toward Enrique with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Ladies and gentlemen," the master of ceremonies announced, his voice echoing through the ballroom's sound system, "please gather around as we celebrate the engagement of two remarkable individuals whose partnership promises to reshape multiple industries." Preparing and narrating the story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. And now back to the story. The crowd formed a circle around us, their faces eager with anticipation. I felt a surge of pride as I looked at the assembled guests. Senators, Supreme Court justices, international business leaders, Nobel Prize winners. These were the people who could help us turn our grandest visions into reality. Percival Thorne and Genevieve Sterling have individually achieved what most people only dream of, the MC continued. Together, they represent the future of sustainable technology and responsible innovation. Tonight, we celebrate not just their love, but their shared commitment to building a better world. Enthusiastic applause filled the room. I reached for Genevieve's hand, expecting to feel her familiar warm squeeze, but her fingers were cold and trembling. When I looked at her questioningly, she avoided my gaze. "Before we toast this wonderful couple," the MC said, "I believe they have some words they'd like to share." This was the moment we'd planned for weeks. Genevieve was supposed to speak about our shared vision for combining business success with social responsibility, while I would announce our engagement gift to several environmental charities. Instead, Genevieve stepped away from me and walked directly to the microphone. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice steady but strangely distant. "All right that tonight is about partnerships in the future, but not in the way you might expect." A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. Gosh, I felt my stomach beginning to tighten with an inexplicable sense of dread. "For the past year, I've been living a lie," Genevieve continued, her voice growing stronger and more defiant. "I've been pretending to be happy in a relationship that was nothing more than a business transaction. Percival Thorne may be brilliant at making money, but he doesn't understand the first thing about genuine human connection." The ballroom fell, dead silent. I could feel 300 pairs of eyes shifting between Genevieve and me, watching for my reaction. My training in high-stakes negotiations kicked in automatically. Never show weakness. Never reveal your emotions. Always maintain control. "Genevieve," I said calmly, stepping toward the microphone, "perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No," she exclaimed, her voice echoing dramatically through the sound system. "I'm tired of private discussions and calculated decisions. Everyone here needs to understand that real love can't be bought or negotiated." She turned toward the crowd, her eyes blazing with an intensity that was both magnificent and terrifying. "I'm in love with someone who sees me as more than an asset to be acquired. Someone who values passion over profit, authenticity over appearance." My blood ran cold as I watched Enrique step forward from the crowd, his face a mask of fake concern, but his eyes gleaming with something that looked disturbingly like triumph. "Genevieve, you're upset," Enrique said, his voice carrying just the right note of gentle worry. "Maybe you should take a moment to think about what you're saying." "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," she replied, reaching for his hand. "Enrique Myers is the man I should have been with all along. He understands that business means nothing without genuine human connection." The crowd erupted in shocked whispers and gasps. I watched in surreal slow motion as cameras flashed and phones emerged to capture every moment of my public humiliation. The French ambassador looked mortified. Several tech CEOs were backing away as if they'd stumbled into a family dispute. A reporter from the Wall Street Journal was frantically typing notes on her phone. Enrique has shown me what real partnership looks like, Genevieve continued, her voice rising above the chaos. Not some cold arrangement designed to maximize shareholder value, but a relationship built on trust, equality, and shared dreams. She turned to face me directly, her eyes blazing with a conviction that cut through me like a blade. "Percival, I'm sorry, but I can't marry you. I won't sacrifice my authentic self for your business empire." The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there, surrounded by the most powerful people in the world, watching my fiancée publicly choose my business partner over me. Part of me wanted to rage, to demand explanations, to fight for what I thought we'd built together. But another part of me, the part trained by years of high-stakes business dealings, recognized that dignity in defeat was often more powerful than victory achieved through desperation. "I see," I said simply, my voice carrying clearly through the silent ballroom. "Then I wish you both happiness." I turned and walked toward the exit, ignoring the stunned faces and whispered conversations that followed in my wake. Behind me, I could hear Genevieve's voice faltering as she realized I wasn't going to fight for her, wasn't going to make a scene, wasn't going to give her the dramatic confrontation she'd apparently expected. What neither she nor Enrique understood was that they'd just destroyed themselves far more thoroughly than they'd destroyed me, and I was the only one in that room who knew it. The morning after the engagement party, I sat in my penthouse office overlooking Central Park, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of gold and amber. My phone had been buzzing incessantly since 6 a.m. with calls from reporters, business associates, and concerned friends, but I'd ignored them all. Instead, I focused on reviewing the documents that Wilfred Stone, my attorney, had spread across my mahogany desk. "The media is calling it the Plaza Hotel scandal," Wilfred said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses as he reviewed a stack of legal papers. "Forbes, Bloomberg, and the Wall Street Journal all have front-page stories. But more importantly, we need to discuss the immediate business implications." Wilfred had been my father's attorney for 30 years before becoming mine, and his methodical approach to crisis management had saved our family from numerous potential disasters. His silver hair and conservative demeanor masked one of the sharpest legal minds in corporate America. "What's the immediate damage assessment?" I asked, sipping my coffee while scanning the morning headlines on my tablet. The photos from last night were brutal, Genevieve's passionate speech, Enrique's calculated expression, and my own composed exit had been captured from every angle. "Surprisingly minimal," Wilfred replied. "Our stock price dropped 3% in after-hours trading, but that's largely speculation about leadership instability. Most of our major contracts have force majeure clauses that protect against personal circumstances affecting business operations, and the partnership dissolution papers." "Ready for your signature?" he said, sliding a thick document across the desk. "Once you sign these, Enrique will officially be released from all operational responsibilities at Thorne Myers Industries. His 10% stake remains, but 10% means nothing without controlling interest," I finished. "He'll discover that soon enough." What Wilfred and I both understood, and what Genevieve and Enrique had never realized, was that the company's actual power structure was far more complex than it appeared. While Enrique held 10% of the company's shares, those shares came with significant restrictions. He couldn't sell them without my approval, couldn't make any major decisions without board consensus, and most importantly, couldn't access any operational funds or make any strategic decisions without the controlling shareholders' authorization. "Me? There's something else," Wilfred continued, his expression growing serious. "I received a call this morning from Enrique's personal attorney. Apparently he's planning to start his own company and wants to take several of our key clients with him." I couldn't help but smile at this news. "Let me guess. He assumes that his 10% stake gives him the right to compete directly with us." "Precisely. He's also under the impression that his partnership status grants him access to our proprietary technologies and client databases. How long until reality sets in?" Wilfred checked his Rolex. "I expect his attorney will call back within the hour. Once they actually read the partnership agreement and discovered the non-compete clauses, intellectual property restrictions, and operational limitations." As if on cue, my private phone rang. The caller ID showed Enrique's number. Percival. His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. We need to talk. Immediately. Good morning, Enrique, I replied calmly. I assume you've had time to review the partnership agreement with your attorney? What the hell is this? He exploded. These documents say I can't access any company accounts, can't contact our clients, can't even use our technology platforms. How am I supposed to run my portion of the business? You're not, I said simply. Because there is no your portion of the business. You hold 10% of shares with limited voting rights and no operational authority. You always have. The silence on the other end was deafening. I could practically hear the wheels turning. In his head, as the full implications began to sink in. That's impossible, he said finally. We built this company together. We're equal partners. We built this company together, yes. But we were never equal partners. My father insisted on maintaining controlling interest when he provided our initial funding 8 years ago. Your attorney can review the original incorporation documents if you'd like confirmation. You ... You lied to me for 8 years. I never lied to you, Enrique. I simply never corrected your assumptions. The information was always available if you'd chosen to review it with competent legal counsel. Another long pause when he spoke. Again, his voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. Genevieve was right about you. You really are just a cold, calculating businessman who values control over everything else. Perhaps, I replied, but I'm also the cold, calculating businessman who just granted you both exactly what you asked for last night, complete freedom from our partnership. I hung up the phone and turned to Wilfred, who had been listening to the conversation with barely concealed amusement. How long do you think it will take them to realize they're completely cut off from company resources? I asked. Well, his corporate credit cards were deactivated at 6 a.m., Wilfred replied, consulting his notes. His access to our office building was revoked an hour ago. His company's email account will be suspended as soon as he attempts to log in. And Genevieve. Miss Sterling never had any official company access, so there's nothing to revoke. However, I took the liberty of canceling the joint credit cards you'd established for wedding planning. She discovered that when she attempts to use them, my floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched the city coming to life below. Millions of people starting their daily routines, unaware that they were witnessing the beginning of what would become one of the most dramatic corporate shakeups in recent history. My phone buzzed with a text message from my assistant. Singapore development team ready for video conference. Zurich office requesting immediate consultation on energy project. Tokyo subsidiary needs approval for new AI initiative. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Enrique and Genevieve were discovering the true cost of their betrayal, the rest of my global empire was eagerly waiting for direction on projects that would generate hundreds of millions in revenue. Wilfred, I said, closing the partnership dissolution documents and sliding them back across the desk. I want you to prepare for an extended absence. I'm going to Singapore to personally oversee our Asian expansion. For how long? However long it takes to build something that makes last night's humiliation look like the best thing that ever happened to me. And if Enrique or Miss Sterling attempt to contact you, I stood and walked to the window, watching the morning sun transform Central Park into a landscape of golden possibilities. Tell them I'm busy building the future they chose to walk away from. What I didn't tell Wilfred was that I already had plans in motion that would not only rebuild my reputation but establish me as one of the most successful entrepreneurs of my generation. Plans that would make my former fiancée and business partners betrayal seem like the greatest favor anyone had ever done for me. They thought they'd destroyed me. Instead, they'd freed me to become unstoppable. 18 months after the Plaza Hotel scandal, I was standing on the observation deck of Singapore's Marina Bay Sands, watching the sun set over the most ambitious smart city project in human history. Below me, construction crews were working around the clock to build what would soon become the template for sustainable urban development worldwide. The project was 3 months ahead of schedule and already generating international attention. From governments across Asia and Europe, the environmental minister from Germany just confirmed their visit next month, said Alison Stewart, my newly appointed Chief Operating Officer for Asian markets. A brilliant Stanford MBA who'd previously managed operations for 3 Fortune 500 companies. She'd joined our team 6 months earlier and had already proven invaluable in navigating the complex regulatory landscape of international development. Excellent, I replied, reviewing the financial projections on my tablet. And the Australian delegation? Scheduled for next week? They are particularly interested in our renewable energy integration protocols. Our Singapore Smart City project was just one of 7 major international initiatives I'd launched since leaving New York. In the past 18 months, Thorne Industries had simplified the company name after Enrique's departure had secured contracts for sustainable development projects in Dubai, Melbourne, Stockholm. Our revenue had increased by 340%. And our company valuation had jumped from $2 billion to over $6 billion. Meanwhile, my former business partner and fiancée were discovering just how thoroughly they'd miscalculated their position. Allison handed me a folder marked Competitive Intelligence Report information our legal team had compiled about Enrique and Genevieve's activities since the engagement party. What I read was simultaneously satisfying and pathetic. Myers Sterling Consulting, I read aloud, noting the ambitious name they'd chosen for their venture. How's their client acquisition going? Poorly, Allison replied with barely concealed amusement. They managed to sign 2 clients in there. First 6 months, a small renewable energy startup in Brooklyn and a boutique hotel chain looking for sustainability consulting. Total combined contract value, approximately $200,000. I couldn't help but smile at the irony. $200,000 wouldn't have covered the catering costs for our Singapore project's groundbreaking ceremony. What happened to their other prospects? That's where it gets interesting, Allison said, pulling out a second document. They approached 17 of our former clients, offering to provide more personalized service at reduced rates. 16 of them declined immediately and informed our legal team about the solicitation attempts in the 17th. Techflow Industries initially expressed interest, but terminated discussions when they discovered that Enrique couldn't provide any of the proprietary AI algorithms or sustainable technology platforms he'd promised. Apparently, he'd assumed he still had access to our intellectual property. The legal ramifications had been swift and decisive. Wilfred Stone had filed cease and desist orders against Myers Sterling Consulting for attempting to use our trademarked processes and patented technologies. The small consulting firm had been forced to pay substantial legal fees just to avoid a federal lawsuit for intellectual property theft. But their business failures were only the beginning of their problems. What about their personal finances? I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. Allison consulted her notes. Genevieve's personal consulting firm collapsed 6 months after she left you. Apparently, most of her clients had only worked with her because of her connection to Thorne Myers Industries. When word spread about the engagement party incident, they began questioning her professional judgment. I remembered Genevieve's pride in her independent consulting business. She'd built it carefully over several years, cultivating relationships with high-profile clients who valued her insights into emerging market trends. Losing that income stream would have been financially devastating. But more importantly, it would have crushed her professional identity. Enrique's situation is even worse, Allison continued. His personal investment portfolio was heavily concentrated in tech startups. It required our company's partnerships to succeed. When those relationships ended, his portfolio lost approximately 70% of its value. How much liquid capital do they have left? Based on public records and credit reports our attorneys were able to access, we estimate they're currently surviving on less than $50,000 in combined assets. They've had to downsize from Enrique's Upper East Side penthouse to a modest apartment in Queens. The contrast was staggering. While I was negotiating billion-dollar infrastructure deals with world governments, they were struggling to maintain a middle-class lifestyle in one of New York's outer boroughs. But their social fall from grace was perhaps even more dramatic than their financial collapse. The social implications have been particularly brutal, Allison noted. They've been essentially blacklisted from Manhattan's business elite social circles. The general consensus seems to be that their behavior at the engagement party demonstrated poor character and questionable judgment. I wasn't surprised. The business world, especially at the highest levels, operated on trust, discretion, and professional behavior. Genevieve's dramatic public betrayal and Enrique's calculated manipulation had violated unwritten codes that governed how successful people conducted themselves. No one wanted to associate with individuals who might create similar scenes at their own events. Have they made any attempts to contact me directly? Several, Allison replied. Enrique has called your office 14 times in the past 6 months. His messages started with requests for partnership discussions, but have gradually shifted to what can only be described as pleas for financial assistance. And Genevieve? More subtle approaches. She's been reaching out to mutual acquaintances, claiming she wants to have a conversation about moving forward professionally. She's also been attending industry events where she knows you might have representatives present. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the bustling construction site below. Thousands of workers were building something that would house 500,000 people in the most sustainable urban environment ever created. The project would generate jobs, reduce carbon emissions, and establish new standards for urban planning worldwide. This was what I'd chosen to focus on instead of revenge or bitterness. While they'd been scheming and struggling, I'd been building. The future? There's one more thing, Allison said, her tone growing more serious. Our intelligence suggests they're planning a more direct approach. Sources indicate they're preparing to make a public statement claiming that Enrique's separation from the company was illegal and that he's entitled to compensation for intellectual property he helped develop. I turned back to face her, intrigued. By this development, are they threatening legal action? Their attorney seems to think they have grounds for a lawsuit based on Enrique's contributions to the company's early development. They're apparently preparing to argue that the original partnership agreements were unfair and potentially fraudulent. This was actually encouraging news. A legal challenge would force them to examine the company's actual structure and ownership. Documentation under court supervision, when federal judges and independent forensic accountants reviewed the evidence, they would discover that every aspect of our business relationship had been meticulously documented and completely legal. More importantly, a lawsuit would trigger discovery processes that would expose just how little Enrique actually understood about the company's operations, its financial structure, and strategic decision-making. It would become public record that his contributions, while valuable, had been those of a skilled employee rather than a true partner. Let them proceed, I said, feeling a sense of anticipation I hadn't experienced since the early days of building our first startup. In fact, I want Wilfred to prepare our most comprehensive legal response. If they want to challenge our business relationship in federal court, they're about to get a very expensive education in corporate law. Allison smiled at my response. Should I inform the legal team to begin preparing for litigation? Absolutely. Make sure they understand that this case will likely set precedents for partnership dissolution procedures. I want our response to be so thorough and devastating that it becomes a case study in business schools. As the sun disappeared behind the Singapore skyline, I felt a sense of profound satisfaction. In less than 2 years, I transformed a humiliating personal betrayal into the catalyst for unprecedented professional success. While my former partner and fiancée had been consumed with schemes and desperation, I'd been building an empire that would outlast anything they could imagine soon. They would learn that their greatest mistake wasn't just betraying me at the Plaza Hotel. Their greatest mistake was underestimating exactly how much more powerful I would become once they were no longer holding me back. 2 years after leaving New York, I returned to a city that had transformed in my absence. The headlines in the Financial Times announced my homecoming with the kind of reverence typically reserved for heads of state. Tech visionary Percival Thorne returns to expand $8 billion empire. Forbes had featured me on their cover with the caption, "The Comeback King. How Betrayal Built a Global Dynasty." My penthouse office in the newly constructed Thorne Tower offered panoramic views of Manhattan. Stark reminder of how much had changed since that humiliating night at the Plaza Hotel. The 60-story building, completed just months earlier, served as the North American headquarters for what had become one of the world's most influential sustainable technology companies. I was reviewing contracts for our newest project, a revolutionary carbon capture facility that would service the entire East Coast, when my assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mr. Thorne, there's a situation at the front desk." Security is requesting guidance. What kind of situation? A woman claiming to be your former fiancée. She's quite insistent about seeing you. I set down my pen and leaned back in my leather chair, genuinely curious about this development. Send her up. 5 minutes later, my office door opened, and I barely recognized the woman who entered. Gone was the confident, radiant entrepreneur who had once commanded rooms full of billionaires. This version of Genevieve Sterling was hollow-eyed and desperate, her designer clothes replaced by a rumpled dress that had clearly seen better days. Her once perfect hair hung limp around her shoulders, and the dark circles under her eyes spoke of months of sleepless nights. "Percival," she breathed, her voice trembling with a mixture of relief and desperation. "Thank God you agreed to see me." "Genevieve," I replied neutrally, not rising from my desk. "You look ... different." She laughed bitterly, wrapping her arms around herself as if trying to hold herself together. "Different. That's one way to put it." She took a tentative step. "Closer to my desk, Percy? I need to talk to you. About everything. I'm listening." "I made a mistake," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "The biggest mistake of my life. Enrique. He's not who I thought he was. None of it was what I thought it would be." I remained silent, watching her with the same detached interest I might show to a financial report. "He's been using me," she continued, her voice breaking. "The whole time he was just trying to get to you, to your company. When he realized he couldn't access anything, couldn't build anything real without you, he blamed me for everything. I see." "Percy, please," she said, moving closer to my desk. "I know how this looks. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I'm begging you to give me another chance. We had something real, something special." I finally stood up, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a commanding view of the city below. "Genevieve, you destroyed our relationship in front of 300 people. You humiliated me, damaged my reputation, and cost me a significant business partnership. What exactly do you think has changed? Everything?" she exclaimed desperately. "I understand now what I threw away. Your vision, your integrity, your ... your love. I was blind, Percy, completely blind." I turned to face her, noting how small she looked in my expansive office. "You're right about one thing. Everything has changed. In the 2 years since you left, I've built something extraordinary. My company is now worth $8 billion. I employ over 50,000 people across 6 continents. World leaders seek my advice on sustainable development." Her face lit up with hope. "Then you can help me rebuild. We can work together again like we always planned." "Genevieve," I said softly, "you seem to be under the impression that I've been waiting for you to return." The hope in her eyes flickered. "Haven't you? Not for a single day?" The silence that followed was devastating. I watched her process this information, saw the exact moment when she realized that her betrayal had consequences she'd never considered. But ... but we were partners," she stammered. "We built dreams together." "We did," I agreed. "And then you chose to destroy those dreams for what you thought was a better opportunity. You made your choice, Genevieve. Now you have to live with the consequences." "Percy, please," she whispered, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "I have nothing left. The consulting firm failed. My reputation is ruined. And Enrique, he's planning to sue you, and he wants me to testify against you. I came here to warn you, to show you that I'm still loyal to you." "How generous," I replied, dryly. "And what exactly do you expect in return for this loyalty?" Just ... just a chance. A job, maybe. I could work for you again, help you build something new. I've learned so much about what really matters." I walked back to my desk and picked up my phone. "Allison, please come to my office and bring the file on Myers Sterling Consulting." Genevieve's face went pale. "What file?" "The comprehensive report. My legal team compiled on your activities over the past 2 years. Every failed business venture, every desperate attempt to contact former clients, every pathetic scheme you and Enrique devised to try to regain relevance." The door opened, and Allison Stewart entered, impeccably dressed and radiating the kind of confident competence that Genevieve had once possessed. "Genevieve Sterling," I said. "Meet Allison Stewart." my chief operating officer, and the woman who's helped me build something you never could have imagined. Genevieve stared at Allison, then back at me, finally understanding the complete reversal of our positions. She was no longer the accomplished entrepreneur seeking partnership with a successful businessman. She was a failed consultant begging for scraps from a man who had moved far beyond anything they'd ever built together. "Percy," she whispered one last time. "Please, Miss Sterling," I said formally. "I think it's time for you to leave." 6 months later, I stood in the same federal courthouse where Enrique had confidently filed his lawsuit against Thorne Industries, watching his attorney deliver what could only be described as an unconditional surrender. The case that was supposed to expose my fraudulent business practices had instead become a masterclass in how thoroughly one man could destroy himself through legal incompetence. "Your Honor," Enrique's lawyer said, his voice barely above a whisper, "my client wishes to withdraw all claims and formally apologize to Mr. Thorne for any inconvenience this litigation may have caused." Judge Patricia Martinez looked over her reading glasses with barely concealed annoyance. "Mr. Myers, you initiated this lawsuit claiming fraud, breach of partnership agreements, and theft of intellectual property. After 18 months of discovery, you're simply withdrawing." Enrique stood shakily, looking like a man who had aged a decade in the past 2 years. "Yes, Your Honor. We discovered that all of Mr. Thorne's actions were completely legal and properly documented." What they had actually discovered was far more devastating. The court-ordered forensic accounting had revealed that not only did I legally own 90% of the company, but that Enrique's 10% stake was now worth virtually nothing due to massive legal fees and a punitive clause in our original partnership agreement that activated when a partner initiated frivolous litigation. Wilfred Stone, my attorney, stood with quiet satisfaction. "Your Honor, my client requests that Mr. Myers be responsible for all legal costs incurred in defending against these baseless accusations." Granted, Judge Martinez replied without hesitation. "Mr. Myers, you are hereby ordered to pay damages and legal fees totaling $473,000 to Thorne Industries." I watched Enrique's face crumble as he realized he now owed nearly $500,000 to the man he'd tried to destroy. Irony was perfect. His desperate attempt to claim what was never his had cost him the little he had left. Outside the courthouse, Allison walked beside me, toward our waiting car. "The final chapter of a rather pathetic story," she observed. "Indeed, any word on what they're planning next?" "Genevieve filed for bankruptcy last month," she replied, consulting her phone. "She's apparently working as a junior marketing coordinator for a small firm in New Jersey. Annual salary, $38,000. The contrast was staggering. While she was earning less than what I spent on a single business dinner, Thorne Industries had just announced contracts for 3 new smart cities across Africa and South America. Our company was now valued at $12 billion and employed over 80,000 people worldwide. And Enrique, even more interesting, he's been forced to sell his remaining company shares to pay the legal judgment. The proceeds will cover approximately 60% of what he owes you. He's taken a position as a junior project manager with a construction firm in Ohio. I couldn't help but smile at the poetry of it all. The man who had once shared a corner office in Manhattan's most prestigious business district was now working for someone else in a mid-level position thousands of miles away. As our car pulled away from the courthouse, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought me to this moment. 3 years ago, I had been a successful but relatively conventional tech entrepreneur, content with building a respectable company alongside people I thought I could trust. Today, I was the CEO of a global empire that was literally reshaping how cities were built and powered across multiple continents. "Any regrets?" Allison asked, reading my contemplative mood. "About what happened with them?" "None whatsoever," I replied. "They gave me the greatest gift imaginable. They forced me to discover what I was truly capable of building." And personally, looked at Allison, this brilliant woman who had helped me construct something far more impressive than anything I'd ever imagined with Genevieve. Our relationship had grown organically from professional respect to genuine partnership to something deeper and more meaningful than I'd ever experienced. Personally, I'm grateful. If Genevieve hadn't betrayed me at that engagement party, I never would have met you, never would have built this company, never would have realized that settling for less than extraordinary is the only real failure. In life, 6 months later, Allison and I announced our engagement in a private ceremony with close friends and family. No grand ballrooms, no society photographers, no dramatic speeches about love conquering all. Just two people who had built something magnificent together and wanted to continue building for the rest of their lives. The business press covered our wedding. As a merger of equals, she had just been named Forbes Executive of the Year for her role in our African development projects, while I had been appointed to the United Nations Climate Change Advisory Council. As we danced at our reception in the rooftop garden of our Singapore headquarters, I caught a glimpse of a news report on one of the screens. Enrique Myers had been arrested for attempting to steal construction equipment from his employer in Ohio. The former co-CEO of a billion-dollar empire had apparently tried to sell stolen bulldozers to pay his gambling debts. Turned away from the screen and focused on my new wife, this extraordinary woman who had helped me build something that would outlast anything my former partners could have imagined. Sometimes the greatest revenge is simply living well enough that your enemies become irrelevant footnotes in the story of your success. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.